morning, everyone, again. Happy to be with all of you spending this morning. This particular reading, it also demands a sense of grounding. We are all spiritual aspirants at different stages, but this sort of demands also a sense of now, what have you understood? And then how far are we willing to go? We have this book reading session on Wednesday, and I see Chika here. This last week or before that, we were talking about what Hari was reading this passage, and that there's this word that Yogananda ji used, familial warmth. And before that, he talked about what is the expectation, that leaving everything aside. So in this reading, I think, I don't remember who, but the topic came, we talked about, we were talking about television, watching television, and why do we watch television? And I think all of us to some extent watch it, not necessarily the news, but at least the movies, and we enjoy it. But something, Yogananda himself also has said, like, it's a pest or something he called. So not that he put like television on some high pedestal that we can actually use it. So we know that, yeah, he discouraged that, but this is, on the other hand, we have this, we like it, we find that entertaining, at least for a short moment of time when things are just getting too overwhelming, you watch something and, well, you find solace. So all of a sudden, we find, and we call that, that's what the point of our discussion, like how do we get over these bad habits or something? But then in the discussion it came out they're not bad in itself. Now we're not convinced that they're bad because, like our experience is that when we watch it, it brings a little solace, isn't it? At least temporary. We know it is all temporary and all not, but if it has been a long day, we watch something and it brings us a little temporary thing. So what is it bad? No, it is not, Yogananda. So we have this reading or book that or guidance from Yogananda ji and our own experience, and that's where we sort of are torn in some ways. So how do we deal with it? How do we go for it? And then sometimes we just say, oh, when the grace will come, it will take care of it. And that's another kind of a trap we many a times fall into, isn't it? We talk about grace. Generally, if you reflect, when do we talk about grace? We say, oh, by Master's grace, he brought me here to Ananda. My Master's grace, I found this job. My Master's grace, something like the physical ailment got freed. And it's probably right to say it like that. I don't say no. But it is rarely that we have heard, or even ourselves, we say, oh, it is Master's grace that coronavirus is here. Or the Master's grace that I lost my wife or my husband. Maybe in retrospect you can say that, not that you should lose, I'm saying. But the grace is generally we accompany it with something good happening in our life. Terrible things, meaning all of a sudden we start looking for, my goodness, if something is wrong, as if that we need to take care of it. But what is the purpose of grace? Is the point of grace to give us comfort, give us some joys that we're looking for in life, making our life smooth? In the discipleship vow, after discipleship vow, sometimes we give a letter by Master to his disciples, where he has clearly said in a very good way, but he has said that I am not here to give you any riches on this planet. Grace, the point of grace or the purpose of grace in our life is only to the extent that it is going to free us. Free us from what? Free us from dependence on all these things that we talk about. And that is what we are after. There is a movie, I personally like that movie a lot, I probably talked about it. It's called Zen. And as the main name itself suggests, it talks about, it is about the Zen Buddhism. And a funny thing I'll tell you about. So in that, it is about the Zen master, I don't remember his name, Doje. And their movie shows about the life of the Buddhist monks and in that monastery. So one time when that monastery is actually going through a difficult phase, not because of the, because it's a famine time, so not much things are there. They don't have much things to cook. So kitchen in charge goes to the head of the monastery, Doje, and tells him, Master, today we have trouble. He says, what is the trouble? He says, we don't have enough to cook. And this is the time when they have to basically eat quickly and then sit for meditation. They call it Satsang. So Dorje is not concerned about that. He says, like, cook whatever it is, we'll share it, and then we'll sit in our meditation. The cook says, actually, Master, there is not enough that we can feed everyone. He says, is there rice? He says, yes. So make a porridge out of it. We will just drink it a little, all of us, and then we'll sit for our meditation. Kitchen master is still not convinced. He said, actually, that's not even enough rice to make porridge for everyone. So by this time, Dorje has enough. He said, like, doesn't matter then. We will just drink hot water and we'll sit for meditation. And when we were all watching this movie together, we were sort of putting ourselves into the shoes of those guys, poor monks, and then even the kitchen master, and said, my goodness, stomach, hot water, and after that meditation. Even in Marathi, there is a saying, they say, Adi potoba, mag vithoba. The first, this has to be satisfied. After that, God and everything can be considered. In the same movie, food necessarily isn't my biggest problem, but I sometimes tend to look for low-hanging fruits. In the same movie, there is also a time when one of the new monks, is a good monk, he's a sincere monk, but when everybody sits for meditation, he also sits with them, but that depth, he feels that it's not there. And I said, I have this kind of problem. I can sit for long, but I don't know how deep I go. So I was very curious to see what the guidance his teacher gives him. So he asked one of the senior monks, he says, see, I think I have a problem. He says, what? I can sit for all the time that you guys sit, but I don't think I go as deep as the others go. So I was all ears. What is it going to come now? Maybe he will just say, oh, it's okay, it will come in time, and it just always takes time. Give it some time, just take it easy. I was all ears. What does the senior monk tells? Oh, in that case, you should sit more. You should sit after everybody sleep again. I said, oh my goodness, not a long-hanging fruit. But isn't that the reality? We're trying to understand something. We're not good at it. We won't become good at it by doing less of it. So this, and that's why I said this reading isn't really as easy as as some of these readings are. But this actually demands, what is our intention? Why are we doing these practices? To how far we want to go? Is it that, oh, I do all these things? Sometimes we say, no, yes, I won't tell that story, but yes, I want a good job, a good wife, a good husband, and a good wife. And I also want a freedom. In that same category, something, I'm going to carry all of it, and if freedom wants to come with all these things, good. But it won't come that way. Babaji is one of the stories. That's one of the students, one of the disciples. He wasn't yet disciple. He wanted to, firmly wanted to become disciple of Babaji. Goes to Babaji, says, Babaji, I want to become disciple. Says, Babaji says, no, I don't take any. He says, no, Babaji, this is the only purpose I am here. I have to do it. Babaji is still not concerned. He says, no, I don't take anyone. Babaji, I will do anything that you say. Just accept me as your disciple. So Babaji has had enough. He says, will you do everything? Anything I ask of you? He says, yes, Babaji. He says, okay, go. They were on the mountain. Go onto the cliff and jump. And this disciple goes to the end of the cliff and jumps and dies. And after that, Babaji asks other disciples, says, go and bring his body, disheveled body, because it's high jump he did. And then he puts his hand and then brings him back to life and makes his disciple. That's the conviction. That is the courage. You see, in that lifetime, nothing happened. But Babaji asked him to do something which is not going to be at any means of say, that was Babaji's grace, that I died from that cliff. And that was the end of it. But he did it. He did it because he wanted that freedom. And no matter what it takes, he was ready to do that. There is another saint, we talk about him a lot, Saint Padre Pio. He was an Italian saint, and That's another movie I like a lot. And then in his life also, many good things has happened, and then some things could be relevant. He had stigmata, meaning like had the same wounds as Jesus Christ, God, because of crucifixion. So not that they were crucified, but on there would be blood would come out of his hand, just and that those wounds never healed throughout his life. So when in the initial time of Padre Pio, one of his students or devotees come, and she also brought her daughter, young daughter, and then she said, Padre, this is my daughter, and I brought her here. But she is young daughter. She was not interested in Padre Pio or any spirituality or temple or anything like that. And then she brought her primarily because she was going to go to and join some job. So Padre Pio looks at her and says, okay, do you have the job appointment letter? She said, yeah. So she gives him to look at it, and he looks at it and tears it. And she is furious. He's like, what did you do? I'm supposed to join this job tomorrow, and you just tore it apart. He says, you're not going anywhere. Go home. And she was not happy with that at all. And then she just storms out of the church. And her mother, who is more considerate, and probably she understands that Padre Pio knows more than most of it, so she apologizes for her behavior, and both of them leave. What happens? The night, the place where she was supposed to join, someone else joins, and that someone else gets hit by something, and a big accident happens. So the next day morning, this young girl comes back to Padre Pio and says, Padre, you saved my life. And now Padre Pio is more considerate towards her. And then he tells her that today onwards, you are the only one who will tender my wounds, and only one who will be allowed to touch them and put bandage around them. And that's what she did for the life. Around many years after that in his life, I think by this time Padre Pio was very popular, and then many people would come. He's known to be in the confession box for like hours, 12 hours, 14 hours, throughout the day, into the night sometimes. So one of these times, a very famous female actor, she came. And she went to that confession box, and then Padre Pio was on the other side, and then she sat there and she said, Padre, I'm in love with this man, and I want to be with him. Padre Pio was quiet that time, but the moment she said that, he stormed. He says, no, you're not doing it. He's married, and you have to leave him. And she was not ready to listen. She said, no, Padre, but I love him. He's my life, I can't. He said, stop saying that. You're going to leave him? That's it, go now. There was no consideration, nothing, come my daughter kind of thing, very strong. And she just couldn't take it, howling and crying. She just gets up, some other devotees help her out. Outside it was raining that time, so she just stands in that rain, just completely heartbroken, completely feeling the sense of helplessness. This is what she was hoping, a lot of things from Padre Pio, some miracles, which he had been doing. Nothing of that sort. On the other hand, just shortest possible meeting, and that's it. He cut the cord. And she stood there for hours, 4 hours, 5 hours. The rain was just falling on her. She was crying, everything, completely gone. Everything was gone from her. And finally, after 4 or 5 hours, when she feels again, she walks again, completely drenched, walks into the temple. Padre Pio is still there in the confession box on the other side. And then she sits there with not much energy left. And then Padre Pio asks her, have you decided? She said, yes, I've decided. What have your decision? She says, I will leave him. And that brings smile to Padre Pio's face, and then says, you've done the right thing, my daughter. Henceforth, you are my daughter. And then the love that you just abandoned, you will find him in our Lord Jesus Christ. 4 hours, 4 hours of intensity, maybe a great anguish that she went through. But look at a reward. A human love, again, we all know how fragile it is, how impermanent it is. Will that got exchanged with what? An eternal love in God. We talk, Hari just read affirmation on enunciation, and then that word sometimes seems very heavy. But you see, we have to create that space. I joked just this for some time ago about like we carry all of it and freedom along with that. It won't work. In our home, if you want to invite Master, you have to empty one of those spaces, no matter what precious things you have been collecting. And this is an invitation for renunciation. One of the things that we say in Festival of Light is walking or jumping into the unknown, but the promise is also there. It says, fear not, peace awaits you into the unknown. On to this movie, so I'll tell you about one other documentary I watched. I think it is March of Penguins or something about the penguins. The life of penguin itself is very, very inspiring, like the determination, the courage, and then the endurance that they show is just inspiring. But in this documentary, they show about, like sometimes a penguin decides. Normally, what they do is they, in particular season, they are on the land, and they can't fly, right? So they have to walk all the way to the ocean for food, eat, come back again, a long walk back to the high lands. And that's pretty much, and they do it in the herds because that also gives them protection. That also is the mechanism which has been working for decades, for centuries, for we don't know how long. But then in the documentary they show that sometimes a penguin decides to not go towards the ocean. He leaves the flock and instead starts walking towards the mountain. And there is no rational explanation yet to that behavior. And they say ki even if you try to put him back or try to convince, meaning turn him in the direction of the flock, he will again go back. And in many ways that means he's going towards a certain death. But in spite of all of it, he will go in the direction that he has set. That's the courage. Once something is understood, something is called, no matter what, we go. We talk a lot about community in Ananda. How, strangely enough, the theme song of Ananda, we call, which is what, a community, a spiritual community is probably our strength. And then the theme song talks about go on alone. And in some ways there is a big truth to that. Because you see, like the jump of faith, or that everyone has to do their own. In the community, we will give each other that support, that courage. Even could be cheerleaders for each other at times. But the jump, everyone has to do on their own. Grace has brought us to this space. Grace has been with us all this time. Grace has given us great opportunity to take that leap now. And we shall and we should, everyone, take that possibility, take that leap of faith, have that courage to take the next step to our eternal freedom in God. Oh.